welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotello Esquire and Evan Ginzburg. Boy, these fast intros it leaves us so much more time now to talk on the show, and we're making the most of it, fans. So it's been the holidays are coming up here. We've got Christmas coming up next week, and then New Year's coming up, and then 2022. Will 2022 be any greater than what we've had in 2021 and 2020? Which is 2021 has been a difficult year for me. I know it's been pretty tough. Everybody has had, I think in a lot of ways, 2021 has been a tougher year than 2020. What are your thoughts?
I think people are burnt out with this pandemic already. It's raging again with the new variant. And when people play these shows back years from now, if they watch our shows in order, they could pretty much follow this pandemic, because the reason we started this show, ironically, was because we were both trapped at home, and we said, let's have some fun one night a week and do a wrestling show. And since then, it's evolved. It's not just wrestling, but for the most part, that's our focus. And
it was something to look forward to on a weekly basis. For a little while, it was like the only thing we had going in our lives at all.
Yeah, I'm very tired of the whole thing. My cousin, who I love like a brother, he was just in from England, and the hell that guy went through, 4 COVID tests before, during, and after, just to get on and off the planes, to and from. And in the middle, I haven't even been on a plane.
I haven't been on a single plane or mass transit. I haven't been on a bus. I haven't been on a train. I haven't been on a plane. I haven't been on a van with multiple people in it.
I have. My wife's on it every day. And earlier in 2021, she came down with COVID, and so did I. And it was no picnic. We weren't hospitalized. And but I'll tell you, I'll never forget. I tell this story. I'm on the couch, and I got COVID. And my brain is going, I have to go to the bathroom. And my body's going, I don't know if I could get up and get to the bathroom. I was so exhausted. So about 20 minutes later, I found the strength to get off the couch to go pee, And, interestingly, each day I felt better. And within a week, it blew over. Same with my wife. But maybe that's because we have a good immune system or whatnot. But, we've had friends, who died, were on respirators, who have permanent.
About half the NFL right now, as we are speaking, about half the National Football League is in COVID protocol, or the players have COVID right now. And those are pro athletes that, are nutritionally sound and have personal trainers and medical staff that are with them 24 hours a day, and they all have COVID. So
they're probably not as careful as we are. These are young guys who, don't think it could happen to them. Only it does.
Then again, their health is their bank account.
Yeah.
If they're sick and they miss games, that's on their paycheck. So that's something that I don't even think most athletes. And by now I can understand when you're young and COVID first comes out. But now 2 years later, I'm really surprised that people have a cavalier attitude, towards this.
Well, people have this odd way of looking at the world, like their little circle is the be all and end all. They go to work, they have their family, their kids, their buddies down at the local bar, and they're like, well, none of my friends got sick. And, what about the 800,000 plus that died in the country and millions worldwide? I mean, like that doesn't count because it's not in their little circle. And sometimes they're just dumb. They're just not intelligent people to think that this is nothing, because it's not nothing. I had 6 friends die from this. I mean, this is no joke. And
I myself had a close friend die of it, and another friend of mine's sister died of it too, and she was only about 65 years old.
And
So
none of my friends were old. They were all in their 40s, 50s, 60s. You know, none of these were elderly. So yeah, it's quite serious. And we just today, a local club announced that you have to come in with a test, the rapid test from that day or the day before, like you're getting on an airplane just to walk into the club to hear some music. So this is getting to be really, you know, I'm tempted just to hunker down and like blow off 2022 and you know, just watch great movies, write a book, you know, whatever the case may be. I wrote a book last year. It's finally coming out early next year. And I'll write another book just to keep sane because, you know, I certainly can't spend my day
virtual
watching.
dinner with Russell. That'll be you'll have
Well,
you'll do it that way.
Speaking of yourself, I know some people know you as Buddy, but we at some point will get together and we're gonna do a movie, an actual movie, not starring ourselves, but it's gonna be called The Bison and the Tiger, about Bison Mark Smith and Tiger Khan, both who passed very young, and both who were our dearest friends. And you know that it's like putting ghosts to rest. We're gonna do this at some point, and
Both very similar wrestlers with very different stories that still had the same kind of outcome in the end. You know, they both diverged in different ways. I think Mark probably got more of what he was looking for out of his wrestling career than Tiger did. And Mark was a little older, so you know, than Tiger.
Tiger died at 33, and Mark, I believe, was 40.
41, yeah.
41, yeah.
Yeah, so he did taste the fame I think he was expecting, but I think he thought it could go to an even greater level for him from where he was at. He was just rising as a rising star, and I think Vince would have taken a good look at him if he had achieved a little bit more in Ring of Honor. If he had just been in Ring of Honor for a little longer, done more of the Japanese stuff, a little bit more, I think that Vince was getting ready to bring him in. But it was at a time where there was already guys like Ryback, and there were guys like Braun Strowman, and some other huge dudes that, you know, really took that sort of, you know, Vince wanted the bigger and the best guys. And of all the people that he took from All Pro Wrestling, it was Dilip Singh, you know, the great Khali, who probably had the least amount of talent of any of the wrestlers that we had at APW.
Well, I would say from the little that I saw of Bison Smith in Ring of Honor in New York Live, I would say he was a better wrestler than Ryback. He was a really, you know, quality wrestler, not just a big guy. And I was very impressed with him, and I'm jaded. So for the fans viewing this, what happened was Buddy and I just started talking one day, and we realized these experiences really paralleled. These were among our closest friends, and
Tiger Khan was very close to you. You had him stay at your house. He was a guy that you knew the intimate things about him that he wouldn't reveal.
I would eat dinner at his house with his parents. Go on the road with them just so he'd have company. You know, travel up and down those highways, New York to Pennsylvania, and yeah, man. It was, you know, he'd share his dreams, I'd share my dreams, and yeah, I think it would be almost like The Big Chill, like putting ghosts to rest, not just wrestling per se. And I think it would make for an interesting project. And I want to address this. I got a little heat off and on all week because I said that Kevin Owens made a mistake by staying in WWE, in spite of the fact that he's making huge money staying there, because I said like Bryan Danielson, he could have gone to AEW, or he could have gone to New Japan, or he could have gone wherever, made very good money, maybe not quite as much, and created art instead of mostly vanilla pablum that the WWE produces. And this became, he has to feed his family. And I'm like, if he's getting 2 to 3 million a year from WWE, he couldn't feed his family on half of that, 1 to 1.5 million a year. I mean, I've managed to, pay the bills on a fraction of that throughout my life. So I go back to, for those who don't know, I was associate producer on The Wrestler, the quote unquote wrestling guy. And I'm sitting with Aronofsky one day, and he's telling me, we can't get the funding we need on Mickey's name. At the time, his star was not what it was.
No, The Wrestler made him what it was.
Yeah. So we meet with Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage at the time was top box office. The Wrestler was shot in 2008. And so we're meeting with Nicolas Cage 2007, early 2008, whatever. So Darren says to me one day, he goes, Mickey's the right guy. Mickey's the right guy. Nicolas Cage at the time was 43, 44. He looked good. He was in shape. So he says to me, Nicolas Cage looks too healthy for the part, and he went.
Mickey Rourke did look like he'd been dragged through 10 miles of bad road.
Yeah, Mickey was a boxer. Mickey had,
he has battle scars.
Oh yeah. Nicest guy in the world, but he had been to hell and back. So to make a long story short, Darren goes with his heart, and it's not about money. It's about creating the best art that you possibly can with the right people, with the right cast, making it real, making it ring true. If somebody said to me, Evan, I have a movie project for you. It pays $1 million, but it's absolute crap. It's commercial schlock. Or I'll give you $500,000 to create art. I'm going to go with the art every single time. That's me. So
they come to you with the script for Ready to Rumble 2, and you'll pass. Exactly.
I was offered something about Chris Benoit right after The Wrestler came out. I said, no, thank you. I don't want my name attached to that. I didn't like the vibe. And you don't know what happens when it's edited. You don't know, are they making a hero out of him? It didn't feel good to me. And I turned down a paycheck.
Although, personally, I do feel that a hard-hitting movie that told the truth, or as much as they could get, about what happened with Chris Benoit would be fascinating. I know it's not pleasant, but there are a lot of times movies are made about unpleasant subjects.
My concern was, what would you end up with after the editing? And I just,
Well, it has been made, so it obviously wasn't that great of an idea. So it obviously didn't flow. I do think, though, at some point in time, when we get enough of the story put together, and there's still pieces missing about, what CTE does to people, and what, Chris was going through mentally, and
every wrestler I ever met said they loved Chris Benoit, that he was good to them and a mentor. But my point is, I have turned down paychecks. Maybe Samuel Jackson shouldn't shill for a bank or credit card. Maybe Kevin Hart shouldn't shill for a bank or credit card after you make that first 100 million. Whatever the case may be. And
but there's a lot of people who admire people who are, for lack of a better term, sellouts. And I mean, we see them all the time apologizing for Vince and apologizing for Kevin Hart. No, Kevin Owens. and it's not that I don't. And I guess in some ways we can't prejudge Kevin yet for what he has or hasn't done on his next run in the WWE.
I'm a big fan. I saw him innumerable times for Ring of Honor. I saw him headline versus El Generico, Sami Zayn, whatever you want to call him. But, I'm a fan, and I just hope that he creates art, that he's not a neutered, just another body on the card like Nakamura, who was top 5 in the world.
Joey Gallows. What about Joey Gallows?
Gallows and Anderson?
Yeah, when they brought them aboard and just took a big.
I always tell the story. I go to Madison Square Garden. I'll tell you stories about all these guys. Every once in a while, I'll go to a garden card and Elias is about to sing. Gallows and Anderson come out, and they join in a trio and they sing together. Gallows and Anderson walk out and they don't wrestle.
And there's no wrestling, and it just breaks my heart. They
don't wrestle the rest of the evening.
Those were two of the most talented guys I think the WWE utterly squandered, was Gallows and Anderson.
Let me tell you my Kevin Owens at Madison Square Garden story.
A squash match.
Yeah, he's scheduled to wrestle Brock Lesnar. I'm looking at this like it's the co-feature and it's going to be a great match. It comes on like second, and basically Lesnar squashes him in 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm just cringing because I think of him as a main event guy from Ring of Honor. Then he's in the main event at Madison Square Garden, but the draw was Undertaker was headlining the Garden for the first time in 7 years. So the Undertaker's on one side. Kevin Owens is on the other side. Corbin's on the other side. If you put $1 million cash in front of me right now, I couldn't tell you who the other 3 guys were. And this was not like it was 40 years ago. And it's not that I have Alzheimer's. It was so mediocre that I couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't tell you who the other 3 guys were. It was meaningless. It was just a meaningless 6-man that they slapped together. The Undertaker's back.
But that isn't on Kevin, I mean, that's on WWE's creative, so to speak, and how they keep dropping the ball on this. And all you can hope is that with the money they're paying Kevin,
they'll push him.
And that they'll find a way to maybe tap into his own brain. You see, that's the thing that I think is a real tragedy about the WWE right now. And I think this is when you have a real problem with wrestling feds in general. This is one of those, let's drill deep into the truth of wrestling, which is that when you have a wrestling fed that won't let wrestlers have any input on their own character, their own destiny, the booking of their own matches, and you really, truly just say, you're too stupid to know how to book your own match. So we're going to tell you everything, from how you tie your shoes before you get into the ring to, where you look at each camera for every possible move, to all the things that you can and can't say in the promos. Here's a 40-page book of all the things you can't say. Yeah. And you've got to give a flawless match or we will absolutely unpush you for the rest of the year, and you'll be in nothing but curtain jerk matches for the rest of the year. That puts wrestlers under so much pressure. And we've talked to some of these guys who've been in the WWE and just said that fear that you're going to make a mistake. You never feel like you're doing anything right. You're always under that pressure that you're doing something wrong, and you have to fight that to get something right, is why I think the performances in the WWE are so stilted. Because everyone feels like they're a marionette, that they've got these strings attached everywhere they go, and they can't do what they did to make themselves look great, like in Ring of Honor, where there was less of that like corporate pressure to be exactly some way.
This is not rocket science. I could book Kevin Steen in 30 seconds. You have him and Sami Zayn team up, like Piper and Orton. let them have crazy matches. At some point, Steen and Zayn turn on each other. They have crazy matches. It's not that complicated, but he should be having great matches every night of the week. He's a great wrestler. And the next Garden card, they have a cage match with him and Big E and Seth Rollins. That'll probably be good, but, you know, it's bloodless and they're just throwing three guys together. It's not like it's a feud. And I don't know if a three-man match in a cage is ideal either. But whatever, you know. I wish him well. I'm a fan.
Yeah, and I think he has a chance to improve the quality of the WWE scene if he's booked in a way that takes advantage of that. And why not? I think he has a very good wrestling mind. I think from what I've seen in all of his matches, if you let him do more of his own booking in some ways and ask him what a good storyline would be. Who does he want to fight? Who does he want to build a feud with? You know, find out. And then maybe because you let him do what he wants to do, he puts together an inspired set of matches that he believes in. Therefore, we as the audience believe in.
Absolutely.
Because
let me put it to you this way. He's there 7 years. Okay, name 7 or 14 4-star matches the guys had. It would be hard. Because these guys all, you know, it becomes same 5 moves, great interviews, and the guy always gives 110%. But I can't think of tons of classic matches the guys had. You know,
and that's bad booking. I mean, you're telling me you can't find, you know, in 7 years, a way to book him in more memorable matches. I mean, I can remember matches from The Rock and from Bret Hart that are 20, 30 years old, right? You know, as opposed to any matches that are going on today. I can't tell you a recent match in the WWE that has that same kind of impact that the Hangman Bryan Danielson match that they had in AEW earlier last week that went an hour to a draw.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Bryan Danielson, I'm sure he's making great money. Maybe he's not making $2 to $3 million a year, but he's making good money creating art. Okay, and it's a
they're
choice.
Probably listening to him in AEW. They're probably asking him, "What do you think looks good in the ring?" And Danielson is saying, "I think this and that and this," and they're probably saying, "Do it then." You know, yeah. They're not coming down from up top saying you have to do this and you have to do that.
Here's the new catchphrase for the wrestling fans out there. Create art, not content. WWE creates endless content. Create art. Bryan Danielson and Hangman Page was art. I didn't appreciate the 4 commercial breaks and the 37 commercials, but the match itself was great.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that has to do with letting the wrestlers starting to book themselves, getting away from creative and telling them, you know what, you guys can take a few months off while we let the wrestlers try to book themselves and make themselves a better product in the ring. Because I think that's where the salvation of wrestling is going to come from, is the resting away of things like the WWE's current booking staff and script writers, and letting the wrestlers find out what motivates them. Let them bring what motivates them.
I totally agree. And here's another thing. You can't just keep pushing the same guys. Some of these guys were there 15 years. How many times do we need to see Randy Orton and The Miz and New Day and the Usos? You know, I mean, they're all talented in different ways, but come on, you're $1 billion corporation. Create new stars, create dynamic new stars.
Well, they do. They hire them for 2 months. They don't book them, and then they fire them.
And then the fanboys go, they're just sitting and catering like they're worried about Vince's food bill. These idiots, you know. You got these incredibly talented young fresh talent who are hired because they have the ability to do it, and then they let them go as a cost-saving measure. I mean, I like Kofi Kingston. Do I need to watch him have another 3-star match? Not particularly. The Miz is fine, but it's vanilla. He puts on a good match. He doesn't put on a great match. He puts on a great interview, but he doesn't. And I'm not.
I would argue with the good match part. I don't think he puts on a good match. I'm not a fan. But your point is made. He puts on
the same 5 moves, same 3-star match, basically.
Which becomes 2 stars after you've seen it 1,000 times. The 3-star matches become 2 stars.
And I'm not saying to fire anybody. All I'm saying is create stars, push the younger guys, and
let them do some of the creating. Let them rely on them, and because this is a deeper thing too that I wanted to talk about is that you understand, even though your acting was never really like being Hamlet or anything like that, right. But method acting, wrestling is method acting to a large degree, and to make method acting work, you have to believe in what your character is about, okay? And I think that's totally lacking with the WWE right now. I don't think anybody in the WWE believes in exactly who they are because they've never been allowed to believe in it because it's somebody else dictating to them who they are. And so it is hard for them inside to be motivated the way that no one had to tell Piper how to be Roddy Piper. No one had to tell Bret the Hitman Hart how to be Bret the Hitman Hart. No one had to tell Luscious Johnny Valiant to be Luscious Johnny Valiant. He was Luscious Johnny Valiant. Exactly. That's what he was. No one ever had to tell me how to be Buddy Sotello. I've always been Buddy Sotello. So no one had to direct me how to do that. That was just something that I had. Or Andy Kaufman, what he brought. That was him. That was him. Nobody had to create it and spoon feed it to him. The WWE gets away from that. And the creative means so much to Vince that he breaks these people, turns them into just these human erasers that have nothing in them, or just these like just a syrup bottle with nothing in it. That he just pours everything into, and they are whatever he says they are. And that gives him that kind of release that, oh, I'm so in control, and I just made these people into stars. But people have the ability to make stars of themselves if you give them the ability to believe in themselves and to make what is essential to themselves into stardom.
And also this 50-50 booking deal that WWE does, where you see the same guy lose 1,000 times. Why am I going to believe that Dolph Ziggler is a top contender for anything after he's lost thousands of times? I just don't see that. And I think they're actually doing the right thing with Reigns. He's a credible champion. He's had the belt a long time. He's a winner. You can't have somebody, pinned a zillion times and go, oh, he's a huge star and he's the #1 contender now. It doesn't make sense to me as an old school fan. I don't get it.
No, I would agree with that too. And I feel like AEW is going a different direction by letting these guys be free and do more of what I think they are capable of doing in order to provide a kind of what's my best way of describing it? A kind of like it brings me back to the way things were with Mid-South, NWA, early WWF, and early AWA matches, where guys sort of were. You didn't really, watching a match right up front, maybe unless it's like the Young Bucks, you really don't know how it's going to be. The Young Bucks, I mean, I love the guys. I've worked a card with them. They're really nice dudes, but they're kind of guilty. They almost should. They're the kind of guys that probably should be in the WWE because they really do love delivering like the 5 same moves and give you pretty much the same match every time.
The Young Bucks, when they're in a feud and they're serious, they have great matches. I love those guys. Sometimes there's a line that they cross where it gets a little too cartoonish with the 37th super kick, but a lot of the old school fans hate them with a passion, and I think the Young Bucks are great. I think the Lucha Brothers are great also.
Yeah, I like them too.
I like
them too.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's and the AEW is sticking with those guys. They're finding guys that they like. They push them, and they don't just unpush them. They will lower the amount of pushing they get, but they won't just forget about them entirely and just make them job the entire time like you're talking about. They'll keep them winning 1 or 2 matches or so often and losing some other bigger title matches or whatever, and that keeps them in your eyes as someone that is worth paying attention to, rather than somebody that just keeps losing all the time. Then suddenly they're pushed for a month, and then I think Bearcat was probably like the perfect example of how the WWE just pushes the lever all the way to one end, and then Bearcat right, and then just pulls back the lever the other way, and then kicks him right out of the Fed.
Well, it's like Toy Story. Vince gets bored with his toys, and he stops playing with them. And they go from this is his favorite toy to it's sitting in the toy chest. They're either on a good list or a bad list, like principals have with school teachers. And I just think when the smoke clears, WWE destroys more stars than they create. I think a lot of guys, my God, even going back to the 80s, Vince had all these NWA main event guys who he used as jobbers, and I would just cringe. Just, the Spoiler and Don Canoodle and, guys who main evented for them, all of a sudden were like, on the bottom of the card. And I'm like, something isn't right here. He wasted a lot of great talent. There were guys who were on the rise in the NWA back then. Al Perez, Sam Houston. And next thing you know, they were undercard guys. And it's a shame because a lot of wasted potential when Vince brought guys in. And when WCW went under, that should have been the biggest, invasion angle ever, and it was just wasted. He just didn't want to push guys that quote unquote he didn't create, which is a shame because a lot of these guys they should have been much bigger in WWE than they were.
Yeah. So we were talking before the show about a stunt that went wrong. We won't go into all the details of it, but it did, get us kind of on the side conversation of when what do you do when promoters come to you with like a crazy, stupid idea and they want to push it, and you're like, no, I don't do that. That's not something that.
Well, myself, I mean, you have a lot more experience as a heel manager than I have, but I've done it on the indies in the New York, New Jersey area. And I would just plainly make it clear that I am not a trained wrestler. Don't put your hands on me. I'm not a young guy. I'm doing this for fun. I'm doing this to promote you guys. Basically,
what is the biggest bump that you've ever taken, though? I'm curious.
I don't take bumps. That's what I'm saying. I just don't.
You've never even taken a body slam?
Well, I've been down to the school and taken bumps, just for the hell of it, just to experience it. But I would not. I'm 103 years old. I'm just not going to risk my health.
Oh yeah, I definitely know these days, but like a long time ago when you were first,
No, we we had a match once. I come out with Romeo Roselli at this minor league baseball stadium. You know, Romeo was in WWE, and I'm the heel manager, and we're going up against Tommy Dreamer, and he has this huge kendo stick, and it's like I see where this is heading. I said to the promoter, he's not hitting me with that kendo stick. I'm sorry. I have no like macho thing to prove. And basically what I did was it was kind of like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, where I just fled like in terror into the dugout and disappeared. You know? And for the wrestlers out there who go, this guy's cowardly, again, I'm not a trained wrestler. I'm basically a fan having fun in there. And yeah, some people go, then you don't belong in there. And I understand that too. I do understand that. We did a show once. It was a promotion where the promoter didn't speak English. He didn't speak English. And I wasn't sure if he got the message or not. So we're the heels. And these guys are chasing us. And I'm really running. The faces are chasing us. I'm really running. I'm like, I don't know if they got the message. I don't know if there's anything lost in the translation, but these guys are not putting their hands on me. So yeah, it's an interesting business when you actually get out there. One time, this is a wild story. We're in the dressing room at the Elks Lodge on Queens Boulevard, which is where ECW had been, but this is years later. And we're ready to get out. We're behind the curtain, quote unquote, gorilla position, whatnot. So this guy comes in from the previous match and he's badly hurt. He's badly hurt. He's in the dressing room writhing in agony. And I'm like, this is no joke, this stuff, you know? We're about to go out and we're looking at this poor kid, you know, who's seriously injured. I don't know what it was, because 30 seconds later, we were heading out to perform. And I don't think people realize at any given moment, people have been killed in that ring. People on more than one occasion. Okay, it's literally carried out in a body bag. It's no joke. And as a, you know, functional adult, I realize that my priority is to stay safe and healthy and not be crippled in there to prove I'm tough or whatnot. You know, you are a regular in these promotions. It's a little different. We're doing stuff here and there, everywhere.
No, and at the time that I did it, it was popular to beat up managers. So I took a lot of punishment. I took probably all the stuff that you avoided. I mean, I was body slammed, clotheslined, drop kicked, avalanched, splashed, elbow dropped.
But you did get hurt on occasion, correct?
Yeah, I was. Although not all of it. I mean, usually the stuff that was, I will give this, that most of the guys at APW were extremely well trained, and they were really good at making it look rough, but it didn't hurt. They were very well trained in not potatoing you. But I've had guys that have potatoed me because they were just jerks. They were jerks back in the locker room. There's one guy named Dante was really mad because I was, you know, my character, Buddy Sotello, is from New York. And he was a huge New England Patriots fan. And he had just lost all that money on the Super Bowl when the Patriots beat, I'm sorry, he was, when the Patriots lost to the Giants with David Terrell's catch there. So in the locker room, he was like saying, you're such a New York fan and all this stuff. And I'm like, look, that's just my character, but still, I'm actually a Niners fan, you know. But you know, I was wearing like a New York Giants hat in the ring, and you know, and all that stuff. So he actually bounced off the ropes. He was supposed to, you know, I was having his tag partner held, you know, up, and he was supposed to just bounce into me, and he just absolutely waylaid me with an elbow right to the side of the head. I mean, and just like, he basically almost dislocated my jaw. He hit me so damn hard. And everyone was like, wow, that was an amazing bump you took. I'm like, that was no bump. That's a potato. And God, the guy, Dante, such a jerk. I hope I never run into him anytime soon. But he was the guy that had a hard time telling the difference between reality and what went on in the ring. And I'm not going to make
this is what I'm talking about. You have to be careful out there.
Yeah, and that's why, what happened over this weekend, again, not going to give too many details or blame anyone without any real, there's not been any arrests or any court cases or anything like that. So it's all allegations of things. But there are wrestlers that have trouble, like when they get into the ring, their bloodlust and the desire for combat takes their brains over, and they get out of control. They get caught up in the moment. They maybe are mad at something that you said to them in the locker room, or something you did training with them early in the week. Sometimes guys will take stuff that happens. You see this in Heels, in the show Heels, where something happens when they're practicing together, and a guy will practice and do something wrong, and the guy will say in his head, okay, when I get you in the ring, I'm going to make sure I pay you back for all those times you hit me in practice. I'm going to hit you for sure right in the middle of the ring, And that goes on more often than people actually understand. I think people think that wrestling being a scripted thing always goes to script. And I always tell people, if you thought that everything that wrestlers do live all the time, every time in the ring goes exactly as scripted, they might be the greatest actors of all time. Truth is, they're not the greatest actors of all time, and stuff does fall through. People do get hurt. People take it too far. People have grudges, and then they take that grudge back out in the ring, and potatoing happens, and people going off script or doing things that they aren't supposed to do happens, and the results can be really tragic, as to what happened this weekend. Again, not getting into the details of it, but it's still a horrific situation, which, it's just that sort of thing that made me not a fan of extreme wrestling. And I know ECW was more than just people hitting people over the head with fluorescent light bulbs and barbed wire and setting it on fire. But I'm seeing kind of a trend back towards that sort of wrestling. When I thought it was sort of working its way out of fashion, what was old becomes new again. And I think that there's a growing trend of younger folks that are getting back into the more extreme stuff. It's beginning to start raising its head again.
When we did The Wrestler, we went to CZW's Cage of Death, and we go backstage, Aronofsky, Mickey Rourke, all of us. It looked like a MASH unit. Everybody's covered in blood, being stitched up. They're going through glass, barbed wire, and I don't know. I think it would take a team of psychiatrists to figure it out. Part of my brain enjoys it. The other part is horrified. Guys like lowlife Louis Ramos, I think the charisma is off the charts. But,
I'm a good friend of Vic Grimes.
Yeah.
Vic Grimes, totally nice guy. One of the nicest people that I worked with in All Pro Wrestling. And, he was mentioned in the New Jack Dark Side of the Ring episode. And he's got kind of this reputation as being just one of those killers that was in the ring, but a perfectly nice gentleman outside of the ring. He didn't take what happened in the ring and brought it outside. But there are some people like New Jack, I think, where it was harder. That was who he was all the time.
Guys like Homicide have wrestled hardcore back in the day, and he's a tremendous wrestler. I mean, some of these guys can do both. I think it's when you got just some slob hitting the other guy over the head with a fluorescent, light tube, where you're missing the art of it. But I think, like anything, see, my theory is this, and as crazy as it may sound, I think anything that's done well, anything that's done artistically can be an art, including hardcore wrestling. I've seen Necro Butcher wrestle and do crazy stuff. Ditto Louis Ramos and etc. so on. Even porn, going back to like 70s Chic, You know, there's artistic porn, and then there's, you know, a camera in a bed, and you know, it's garbage. You know, it's anything can be done artfully, and including hardcore wrestling. But what bothers me, ironically, is when you have a WWE with all the money in the world, all the technology in the world, all the publicity in the world, and you create vanilla pablum. That bothers me more than hardcore wrestling. You know, you have all the means, this incredible talent base, unbelievable talent base, guys behind the scenes who have quote unquote brilliant wrestling minds. And what I'm watching is totally vanilla, and you're struggling to stay awake. Even on a pay-per-view, you're sitting there for 3 hours, you have your 2 or 3 good matches, the rest is instantly forgettable, and you go, is this the best they could do? All that money, all that talent, is this really the best that they can do? You know, that bothers me more than when people go, why do you hate WWE? I'm like, I don't hate WWE. A lot of those wrestlers I love. It's just painful to see it squandered, all that talent. Painful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's so as we approach the end of the year, we'll probably have one more show, but what are your reflections about wrestling in 2021, if you have any?
Well, I think the WWE versus AEW fanboy feud is utterly insane. I mean, you can watch both. You can pick and choose. You could enjoy pieces of both. You know, for the fanboys to rage against, you know, both promotions. You see posts where an AEW fan goes to the WWE show and goes, look how empty it is. Meanwhile, these idiots bought a ticket. The WWE fans, vice versa. You know, they go to each other's shows just to, here's a photo. Look how empty this arena is. Ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, listen, genius, you just bought a ticket to support the other promotion. It's not like 2 enemy gangs. It's not 2 rival gangs. It's 2 billionaires. 2 billionaires, and you're putting money in their pockets. You know, look, there's guys who obsess over the ratings and obsess over the ticket sales. It's like, if you don't enjoy it, don't watch it. It's I don't know. I'm glad the indies are stronger. I'm glad the indies are doing well for the most part, even during the pandemic. I'm sad that ROH is, you know, God knows what's happening with them. It sounds like they're going to make some attempt to stay alive, but obviously it's not what it was when guys are leaving and being signed, and they're trying allegedly to sell their library. It can't be a good sign. Yeah, I mean, it's just a crazy year. I'm glad there's legitimate competition for WWE. I think that's needed. AEW is legit. They're doing great for the most part, and they're putting on quality wrestling for the most part. So, I mean, that's my take on 2021.
I think AEW showed that it's got more in the bag than the WWE. The AEW didn't have to let go of 60 wrestlers.
82. 82.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the year's not over, and Christmas could still happen. There could be some pink slips in the or some yellow slips in the works for Christmas and New Year's for WWE personnel. You know, Vince might just need to get himself another Christmas gift. You know, for another ivory toothpicks, a set of ivory coated toothpicks or something. But
old toilet seat like Trump.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Or, but I like where I think that AEW is going. I am also saddened to hear about Ring of Honor. I don't think they're going to wind up being back. In fact, my nightmare about that is that Vince is going to buy him and bury him like he does everything else. He's got the money. It's not very expensive to buy up all of what Ring of Honor used to have now. He can buy it dime on a dollar for what it used to be. And to buy the tapes and to buy all the footage of it and everything. And then he's going to do like he's done with ECW, anything else that he conquers, he's going to mount them on the wall of his office, you know, like a trophy that he shot somewhere in the wilderness, you know. And that's just a real problem, that just another year of Vince just, I think, damages the wrestling in general. And I'm hoping that, you know, maybe in 2021, the 75-year-old Vince McMahon, about to be 76, decides, you know, I've had enough, and he's ready to turn it over to someone else. Now, if he turns it over to that other Khan guy, that's not going to be such a great thing. So, you know, the guy who's running next right now, it's not Tony Khan, is it? I'm trying to remember who the Khan is that runs next.
Killer Khan.
Yes, exactly. Yes. King Corn Khan, if you play the Nintendo wrestling game.
If I were Vince, I would have 10 Ring of Honor guys do an invasion on Raw tomorrow night. It would be the biggest story in wrestling. You know, he looks at these guys like they're minor league, like they're peons. I mean, not realizing that half of his stars came from Ring of Honor.
Yeah, no, he was insulted to even have them compete with him. And yet, you know, that announcement that the WWE made that sort of went under the radar, which is that after they fired all those wrestlers, the 82 that we were talking about, they made the other announcement that they're only going to take wrestlers that they themselves originally developed, and that they're not going to go anymore to the indies and try to. By the way, good luck with that. That's like saying for the NFL, saying we're going to train our own NFL athletes. We're not going to get anyone from college football. We're just going to go
Ridiculous.
It's going to turn into some of the worst products, because one of the things I think energizes a crowd is knowing that someone that they watched when they were minor league wrestlers are making it to the big time. I know that a lot of crowds here in the Bay Area were excited to see Bayley wrestle because they knew she was from here, or that Bryan Danielson, who had managed, who was a part of APW, All Pro Wrestling, was here, you know, and that thought, oh, hey, we could see a local guy or gal who made it big in front of our very eyes, is a big motivating factor for a lot of people. And to take that away and say, no, it's got to be just someone that came right from the WWE from the start, is going to be, I think, a disaster. Maybe something that winds up really hurting the WWE. First of all, I don't think they'll hold to it. I think that the WWE will change its mind and start bringing in independents when they see how their product from scratch to finish wrestler. We saw how the WWE worked when they did Tough Enough, right? That was sort of their way of taking somebody straight from the indies that hadn't had a lot of polish and making them polished. Now, on the one hand, it gave us Johnny Nitro, who was a mainstay. But on the other hand, it gave us Maven, who wasn't really much of a mainstay. So it's no guarantee that the WWE is going to be able to manufacture stuff from scratch and make a phenomenon. Phenomenons are like diamonds. They happen out in the rough. You can't just push coal together all the time and make a diamond out of it.
WWE, when all is said and done, churns out mediocre wrestling, mediocre movies. You know, I don't have high expectations. Mediocre reality shows. What do they really do that's great? I mean, you could say Disney is a monster corporation, but Disney at least makes great movies when they set their mind to it. You know, I have low expectations with anything. Every once in a while, they'll put on a good interview. Steve Austin will interview somebody interesting or whatnot. But, they're not reinventing the wheel, WWE. They churn out product. That's what they do.
Yeah, and that's not always the greatest product in the world. So we have a couple minutes left. I wanted you to give us your movie reviews. What can we look forward to watch in the Christmas break?
Movie reviews.
Shouldn't act so surprised. I'm usually going to ask you that on our show.
I'm Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid by Sam Peckinpah. I recommend anything by Sam Peckinpah. Gritty, ultra violent westerns. Peckinpah was the master. The best of his films was clearly The Wild Bunch. But I recommend Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. It's slow in spots, but all in all,
give me your Christmas movies. Give me 3 Christmas.
Oh
movies.
yeah.
As a Jew, from one Jew to another, we can tell everyone what Christmas movies to watch.
A Christmas Memory, narrated and written by Truman Capote. It's such a beautiful film, heart-wrenching. Everybody knows Truman Capote. He wasn't the most macho guy. He was brutalized as a kid in military school, and his closest friend is his aunt, who's a little slow. She's a little slow. It's a beautiful film. Beautiful film. A Christmas Memory. You can watch it on YouTube. Watch the original, 1966. It was remade later. He narrates it. It's just poetry.
And I would say the same thing about my nomination, which is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
Oh yeah, beautiful, touching,
sensitive.
pointed. Yeah, that's right.
Deep, really cutting edge special effects.
That's right.
Yeah. Drapo will make you cry.
That's right. A Christmas Story, of course. It's a Wonderful
Life. I gotta watch
that
with my daughter. I gotta sit there and watch. This is the year I want to watch it with her. Yeah. I think she'll enjoy that.
It's a Wonderful Life, of course, with James.
I'll argue that. I think It's a Wonderful Life is cliched and hackneyed. I don't like it. I have not been a fan. We don't have to love everything the same, but I've always felt kind of emotionally manipulated by that movie. It reminds me of Forrest Gump. Yeah. It tries too hard to pull your heartstrings, and I feel like I don't buy it because it seems too contrived to me. But
you're the only person on planet Earth that would recommend Santa Claus versus the Martians and not like It's a Wonderful Life. You're the only one.
I'm proud of that.
Right.
Also on my Christmas must-watch list is Brazil and Gremlins and Die Hard. Those are all.
Die Hard's great.
All three great Christmas movies for everybody. But Brazil and Gremlins are overlooked as touching, deep, sensitive Christmas spirit movies.
Okay.
Well, just trying to give the other side of it. If you don't want to see a Miracle on 34th Street or you don't want to see the Christmas Shoes or whatever, I'm trying to think of some other, or I'm Finding a Husband for Christmas from the Hallmark Channel.
Right. I always used to like March of the Wooden Soldiers with Laurel and Hardy. They always used to show that around Christmas time.
I would also recommend the Mr. Magoo's animated Scrooge, the Christmas story.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that's a wonderful animated tale. So anyway, we've got just a couple minutes left. Anything else you want to bring up? Mention your book at all?
Wrestling rings, blackboards, and movie sets coming in 2022. 100 stories. 100 stories. Obviously, from the title, some about wrestling, some about teaching, some about working on the movie The Wrestler. There's a half dozen or so stories that have never been told about that experience. And other movie-related tales working in the film industry, including 350 Days, which was also a very rewarding experience. Oh, one last thing. I just want to bring this up, and I'll do it quick because I know you want to wrap it up. 9 out of 10 people in America, when they went to the movies, went to see Spider-Man. So what that means is every other movie that was out there in theaters shared 10% of whatever minuscule money was out there. And I like comic book films. I like Spider-Man. I like Marvel films. But as someone who actually makes films, it just bothers me because I've sat in distributors' offices where they'll say, we can't put you into a theater. It costs $20,000 a week, to put you into a theater. And there's no guarantee you're going to make that back with a small independent film. So what happens? All the franchises, all the comic book films, they dominate. And, for filmmakers to take a vow of poverty, if that's all they're doing, if that's their only source of income, it's very tough. And I know a lot of great indie filmmakers, as well as a lot of great indie authors who make their living as college professors. They teach writing, they teach film, they teach cinematography, whatever the case may be, because they're not paying the bills as filmmakers, as great as some of them are and some of their films are. So sure, support Spider-Man, and especially it's a quality film, but also support indies. Go out there and because if you don't, one, theaters are going to go away at some point, and two, people will just stop making good films if they can't make money with them.
So all those people, the 90% that saw Spider-Man this week, go out and watch an independent film next week, and you'll pay your penance.
Why not? You might be pleasantly surprised, and these little art houses are hanging by a thread. One by one they go under. So go out to these little art houses in major cities and go see something challenging, something adventurous, or else they'll go away, and there'll only be X-Men 17.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great sentiment. Thank you so much for being on the show. We'll see everybody next week. Good night, everyone.